press the space bar, try that. Okay, or click on the screen.
Most of you probably start your mornings by brushing your teeth. But did you stop to think about what material your toothbrush was made from? Or when you were getting dressed, as you put on your rain jacket, did you think about what polyester is made from? Many of us are probably unaware of how many items we use every day that contain plastic. According to an article by Brian Resnick, polyester, nylon, acrylic, and other synthetic fibers, all of which are forms of plastic, are now about 60% of the material that makes up our clothes worldwide. So, what does this have to do with climate change? Plastic is a big contributor because of the fossil fuels it takes to produce them and the waste it creates after the product is disposed of.
We all use plastic in our everyday lives, so it's important for us to become aware of the impacts that we're having on our natural environment. One thing we did to help demonstrate this point is that over the weekend, we each collected all of the single-use plastics that we used. We did this to help demonstrate the point about just how quickly it can accumulate. When looking at this from a global perspective, the impacts can be extremely detrimental. So something needs to be done to help strengthen this reality, and soon. Therefore, today we'd like to talk to you about how plastic pollution contributes to climate change and the potential ways to help limit the production as well as the consumption of this pollutant.
In a case study by undergraduate students, they expressed that climate change has become one of Earth's greatest concerns. Climate change can be defined by the alteration of the energy balance in the climate system that persists for an extended period of time. This imbalance of the climate is prevalent and evident when observing the rising sea levels, ocean and air temperatures rising, glaciers melting, wildfires, and even volcanic eruptions. All of these extremities are caused by human activity and the negligence of this issue. In the article, Life on Earth Depends on, is shaped by, and affects climate, it is stated that extinction of species in present day is caused by global warming. To go more in depth on the negative effects climate change has on humans, here are some examples. Agriculture is under a major threat. Farms experience flooding or reduced water supply, resulting in lower crop yields. This affects us by lowering our food supply and the quality of food produced because farms are more likely to face diseases and pests. Warmer and polluted air affects our health. The polluted atmosphere is filled with smog that triggers our lungs and potential asthma attacks. The smoke from wildfires also dirties the air. Not only does the warm, polluted air fill our lungs, but people die from the heat stroke experienced in the summer. Hot weather and flooding damage infrastructure used in transportation, which can cause electrical disasters. Now that you understand the overall picture of climate change, we are going to cover a big contributor, plastics.
Typically, when we think about climate change, we focus on more obvious topics such as factories, the use of coal, or maybe the emissions that come out of your car. However, we rarely associate plastic pollution with contributing to climate change. Why is that? Everyone knows that plastic pollution is a huge problem our world is facing today, but many people take the time to stop and think about its contribution to fossil fuels and climate change. According to Catherine Mast in her periodical titled The Environment and Climate, ever since plastic rose to popularity in the 1950s, they've become an essential part of our everyday lives. It's now near impossible to go a single day without using plastic in some way, shape, or form. The material is found everywhere, from the toothbrush you picked up this morning to the clothes you purchased at the store. Therefore, it's clear that plastic has reshaped our lives and that we now depend on it more than we ever have before. A problem that comes with this growth in popularity is the fact that plastic is a special type of material that is incapable of decomposing. Therefore, when it is disposed of, it never truly disappears. According to A.T. Williams in a journal titled Marine Litter Solutions for a Major Environmental Problem, out of the trash that finds its way into the oceans, plastic is typically the dominant pollutant and can sometimes account for up to 100% of the marine litter pollution in a specific area. Scientists, policymakers, and consumers are all becoming increasingly aware of the threat that plastic pollution has on the well-being of our oceans, water systems, wildlife, food, and most importantly, the human population. However, when determining the environmental impacts that plastic pollution has, climate change is oftentimes forgotten about, which is something that needs to be changed immediately.
Like Gracie explained, plastic is everywhere and it's a big problem when it comes to climate change. So now I would like to transition and go over the production of plastics. The petrochemical industry, which makes plastics, paints this picture of creating jobs and providing essential products to meet our growing demands. However, they forget one important part, which is the amount of pollution caused by the production process. According to Zoe Carpenter in her 2019 article warning the plastic crisis is about to get worse, the environmental damage plastic causes and the greenhouse gases emitted during its production cost about $40 billion annually. Now, each step in the life of a piece of plastic, from production, transportation, and managing waste, uses fossil fuels and emits greenhouse gases. And if you take a look at the graph on the left, you can see that the biggest contribution occurs at the beginning of the process and then continues all the way until plastic is disposed. Now, to give you an idea of what these percentages mean, Brian Bankowski, in his article From Making It to Managing It, Plastic is a Major Contributor to Climate Change, published in 2019, refining and manufacturing plastics contributed roughly 184 million to 213 million metric tons of greenhouse gases in 2015. This is the equivalent of 45 million cars driven for a year. The two primary greenhouse gases emitted by the production of plastics is methane and ethylene. And Sarah Jean Royer and her colleagues explained that polyethylene is the most produced and discarded synthetic polymer globally, and this is the biggest emitter of both of these hydrocarbon gases. So to focus more specifically on one part of the process, fracking is a very popular way. It's an inexpensive way to get natural gas, which is one of the raw materials needed for to produce plastic. So because it's inexpensive, the plastic industry is now even growing bigger because more companies want to invest and use this type of process. But this procedure adds carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, so it's just contributing more to climate change. And if you guys take a look on the left, that pictures of Montana de Oro State Park. And on a more personal and relatable note, they're actually thinking of introducing fracking into part of the area of the park, which would definitely affect us, and we could lose part of that beautiful place.
After plastic is produced, it is utilized somehow in almost every area of our lives. As you can see from this graph, the highest usage for plastic materials is packaging, which is followed by building and construction, textiles, and consumer and institution products. Some other categories are transportation, electronics, and industrial machinery. Plastic is clearly a very easy option for a diverse group of companies to utilize due to being an extremely versatile material. This versatility makes plastic an ideal option for a wide range of consumer and industrial applications. Plastics are relatively low density, which gives the product the advantage of being much lighter in weight. In addition to providing a lighter weight to a product, the plastics are corrosion resistant, which makes them a common choice for electronics and vehicle production due to the increased durability. According to the What Are Plastics page, which is published by the website Plastics Europe, although most plastics have excellent thermal and electrical insulation properties, some plastics can be made to conduct electricity when required. With the advancement of these electricity-conducting plastics, the use of plastics in electronics that we use every day, like computers and phones, became much more prevalent. Even with being corrosion resistant, plastics can be easily molded into any shape, structure, to fit exactly what is needed without losing their durability. One more. Now, we all may have our own sense of the benefits of plastic. Many of us rely on plastic for everyday items like our phones, toothbrushes, and the usual spring quarter essential of an ice drink when it's very hot outside. Plastic is everywhere, and it makes sense. Plastic is often used for preservation, for our safety, and most commonly for practicality. The development of plastic was a huge advancement in preventing food from getting spoiled. In an editorial corner published by ProQuest in response to the question, why were plastics invented, Jay Sapala explains that plastics have several advantages like economic manufacturing and processing, lightweight, and durability. In the same piece, Sapala also claims that often plastics are superior in performance, and what would the world be without plastics? The main benefit of plastic, though, is its cost. Plastic is a much cheaper option than many other materials, making it not just inexpensive to produce, but inexpensive for us to purchase as consumers. Now, I'm not advocating for everyone to go out and purchase plastic bottles instead of using a reusable one, but in some countries, that's much easier said than done. Outside of America, many countries struggle for their access to clean water. In countries like Mexico, plastic water bottles are one of the only ways to guarantee clean, consumable water. But even with these benefits, the reality of plastic pollution is much more grim. In a video published by CNN covering the occurrence of plastics on the remote Cocos Islands, which are in the Indian Ocean, they detail that over 414 million pieces of plastic were found washed up on beaches. Now you may be thinking, but when I use a plastic bottle, I recycle it. And as Michelle and Tatum will explain in much more detail, the process of recycling isn't necessarily what we all imagine.
So the next question is, what do we do with these plastics when we're done using them? Well, let's focus on a popular way that I'm sure we all think of what to do with our plastic waste, recycling. So plastic recycling is the process of recovering different types of plastic material in order to reprocess them into different products. So the whole point of it is to return the natural resources back to nature to ensure their sustainability. So one of the most widely adopted technologies for large-scale treatment of plastic solid waste is called mechanical recycling. And there's 5 stages to mechanical recycling. First, the plastic gets sorted by make and type, and then it's washed to remove any impurities. It's shredded up into little small pellets, which is the right picture on the slide. And then these pellets are identified and classified, and then they're melted so they can be used for different types of plastic products. So the good news with plastic recycling, according to Jeanette Garcia and Megan Robertson in their article, The Future of Plastic Recycling, published in 2017, the potential energy that could be saved from recycling all global plastic solid waste is about 3.5 billion barrels of oil. However, on the other hand, Harriet Sarden and Andrew Dove state in their 2018 article called Plastics Recycling with a Difference that more than 40 years after the launch of the recycling symbol, only 5% of plastics manufactured are actually recycled. The rest find themselves into landfills and eventually pollute the environment. So while recycling can be very beneficial in terms of our plastic waste and what we do with it after, we still need many advancements in the technology in order for it to truly be effective.